This is the Forgecast, your eye into the who's who and what's what in cybersecurity and the cloud. Each episode, we bring you fresh perspectives, personal stories, insights, and advice from leaders, innovators, and change makers forging a stronger future.
Hello and welcome to the Forgecast. My name is Alberto Yépez, co-founder and managing director at ForgePoint, and I have the pleasure to be speaking today with Dr. Yonesy Núñez, who is a senior executive in cybersecurity that has worked in many multinationals and brings a lot of experience. And we're very glad to have him. But I don't know how I can describe Yonesy as a member of our community, but he has he's had a progressive career in humble beginnings, but he's become a trailblazer in our industry. So, Yonesy, welcome, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Alberto. Thank you for having me, and thank you to the Forgecast. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, and I look forward to our discussion, as always, thinking ahead and focusing on what can we do for others.
Amen. So, Yonesy, why don't we get started? I think there's defining moments in our career, and people perhaps don't know where you came from. I know you're from the Dominican Republic. I'm from Peru. We're Latinos. We're perhaps a very small sliver of our industry. But maybe can you say how you got to the U.S. and started your career? Just give us a snippet of how that progression came.
Thank you for that, Alberto. So, as you probably know from all our discussions personally during these activities we perform, whether conferences or other chats, I was born and raised in the Dominican Republic in a small town called Ansonia, which is in Asua, which is southwest of the Dominican Republic, the capital. It's a very small town, coastal town, and I came to the States when I was in sixth grade. My parents were the trailblazers for us. There's four of us, two boys, two girls. And, that story is one where I feel that it really resonates on how we're brought up and the values around always looking to get better. We have a saying that says, al mal tiempo, buena cara, and that is to inclement or bad weather, a good face. So there's always that progressive, can do better. How do we enhance not only ourselves, but those around us? And I learned that at an early age, that there's always something to strive for, something to excel at. And by the way, can you bring others along the journey, whether they're your family members or they're others? I would say that coming in around in the sixth grade, one of the things that I learned and was keen for me was meeting Colin Powell. So at the time, Colin Powell was doing a lot of work in the space as one of our first 3 and then 4-star generals. And he actually attended IS-52, which happens to be the middle school that I went into. So in the 7th grade, he came to our school to talk to us. And one of my classmates, Lucas Orocho, I still remember his name, he drew a picture of Colin Powell, and he came to our class after he met with the entire school. And as he was shaking our hands, telling us his story of how he grew up in the same neighborhood. He went and had lunch and had summer free lunches at the school where we attended. And that was resonated with me because we had to go to get free lunches in the summer. And he said to us, you can be whatever you want, and you can be the next Colin Powell. And not that I wanted to be the next Colin Powell, but that really resonated with me in saying that it doesn't matter where you come from and what you have. There's no limit to what we can achieve when we have that passion and when we don't forget where we come from. So that's something that's stuck with me when I met him in subsequent years and had conversations. He didn't remember me, but he remembered that picture. So that's how we kind of stay connected. And I would say that was one of those seminal moments for me early on in my life that kind of set me on the path of how do I get better? How do I help others around me to understand that hardships or mal tiempos, right? The inclement weather, they're just passing. You have to have that spirit of transforming, getting better, and overcoming. And those were some of the early lessons in my life, Alberto, that kind of brought me here where I am today.
That's great. And how does your career in cybersecurity get started? Because obviously you had that you know purpose of becoming better and so on, and you could have chosen to go anywhere in any field. But how does cyber start factoring into your career?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I started, always have been a tinkerer. I like to say that growing up with limited means in the Dominican Republic makes you a MacGyver. So that was one of my favorite shows coming up. So I always enjoyed taking things apart, figuring out how things work, putting them back together. Can I make things better? Can I make it faster? And sometimes, can I mess things up?
Yeah.
So that was part of my life. So I've always been tinkering with technology, with computing and mechanical things. And I actually started college as an accounting major, believe it or not. And when I took my first accounting class, I believe sophomore year, first semester, I didn't like it. I mean, I enjoyed debits and credits, but I didn't think that I could do that my entire career as it was painted to me. I met with my advisor, and she told me at the time, "What do you really enjoy? What do you do on your spare time?" And I said, "Well, in my spare time, I do some work study here at the school, and I'm actually responsible for all these computers and networks that you use to print, save, and store your files. So that's what I like to do. I really enjoy it." And she said, "Well, why don't you go do something in that space?" And that's exactly what I went to do. And for 4 years while I was at school, I continued to work within the school, received a couple of internships. I actually had a full-time job before I graduated, managing the network architecture at the New York Media Group, which is a media company. I'm not sure. I think they've gone through multiple different acquisitions at this point in time. But that's how I got into technology. Security was a more interesting story as I went down and took a couple of courses, SANS courses at the time, came back to the office and said, "Hey, I found all these vulnerabilities and things that shouldn't be. And now I have access to things I shouldn't have access to. So we need to get somebody to fix this stuff." My boss at the time turns around and goes, "You found it, you fix it." And that's how I got into cybersecurity. That was the journey. And I haven't looked back since. I've been excited, enamored. It intrigues me, the ways that folks can circumvent controls you put in place, and then how to make that better is a constant arms race. So I can tell you that each and every day I have the same excitement when I get up and when I go to bed. I have the same excitement about the work that I do and for the companies that I work for, and not just for the companies I work for, but the industry as a whole. We've been evolving in place. We've seen the changes that can happen and how quickly they can happen. And, my focus really has been over the last few years to leverage cybersecurity to help be that transformer, that digital capabilities advancement. I feel that cybersecurity is at the fulcrum of allowing for those things to happen faster, so that we can get more penetration with the newer technologies and workloads.
Yeah, I love the fact that you're one of those CISOs that you see cybersecurity as an enabler, not necessarily as a retractor, and we need to protect and raise all these, barriers against that, because you view it as I'm going to enable new capabilities, and just the passion that you exhibit when you talk about it is something that, that's the way we need to think about it. But you were in your career, you ended up being in PwC, or one of the those groups, right? And I think is there also when you got more formal training beyond the SANS Institute and things like that? Because then they're working in financial services, right?
Oh, absolutely. So I would say that, once I kind of got turned on to the security component, cyber wasn't still very popular back then. How I started getting more in tune was, my first big CISO gig was at this company called Paul Corporation. I believe they were just recently acquired by Danaher a few years ago. But that was the first opportunity that I received to lead a global and build out a global security program for this global manufacturing firm. And that's where kind of the world opened up for me as to what was in the realm of possibility, dealing with regulators throughout the globe, dealing with different privacy and security requirements, and then trying to balance that with the real life attacks that we were seeing. So I've always been very big fan of building communities. So I helped build out the first Forgecast chapter on Long Island. So partnering with DHS,
Yep.
FBI. Shout out to Marianne, who's my special agent that I work very closely with in Long Island to get us hooked in to all the critical infrastructure on Long Island as part of my role at Polk Corporation. And what I learned was that we needed more collaboration and that building an environment where people can come in and share information was amazing for me. Part of that sharing of information, I got the opportunity to come into New York City. So from Long Island to for those who know, the LIRR, you guys know how much fun that is. So taking the LIRR into Manhattan, I went to this conference. There were a bunch of folks, of course, in financial services. And I happened to be on a panel. And it's interestingly enough, on that panel, there was Jim Routh, who at the time, which is kind of full circle story, was the CISO at DPCC. And, the conversation afterward was around, hey, what are you doing? Where are you working? So I explained I'm a manufacturing for a global firm, probably never heard about it, but that's what we do. And he said to me, have you considered a career shifting your vertical into financial services? Which I responded, no, I'm pretty comfortable. And I think, I have a lot of work to do at my company, but not a bad idea. Why should I change into the financial services sector? And he goes, that's where all the bad guys are coming. We're getting attacked all the time. So we could definitely use someone like you. So in having that conversation with Jim, kind of what I identified was what's the best way of breaking into a new vertical? Well, go perform and provide services to those. So when it's a PwC, you got a great opportunity to build out a cybersecurity and insurance practice there. And he was not wrong, because I had probably the top 25, whether hedge funds, big banks, or multi-regionals were my customers. So in providing those services, I got really in tune with attacker activity, threat landscape, and what were the key priorities for financial services. And then that led to a global information security officer role at Citigroup. And then that led to Wells Fargo, Jack Henry, and now where I'm at the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember when we met, you were a BISO. A lot of people may not understand that. People in the industry will understand. You were a business unit CISO, and it was in Wells Fargo. You had parts. You need to be partnering with the business, understand their requirements, so that you can drive key enabling capabilities. And then eventually, you got back to again driving the whole program. But your experience as a BISO and your transition to CISO.
Yeah, so it's a really good question, right? So I kind of took a full circle route from becoming a CISO at a manufacturing firm to a CISO at a financial services organization. So it took me a while to get back to being the CISO, and I can tell you that it was great. It was a great journey because in that space, I really got closer to the business and understood a little bit more about why cyber, why is important, and what does it mean, to the point now that I think number one selling aspect for my organizations is my ability to really hone in on business needs and then lever my background and expertise in cybersecurity and technology to make sure I can figure out and prioritize, because again, you can't do it all, but prioritization becomes key. And when you understand the business, why you're doing the things that you're doing, it makes it easier for us to prioritize our activities, because at the end of the day, we also want to make sure we're delivering positive business outcomes. And that was an area that I really honed in my roles at Citi and at Wells Fargo, really focusing on what the businesses were doing.
Yeah, I think it is a defining moment, because a lot of CISOs come in and said, hey, I know what it needs to be done. Let me just put the program together. And sometimes they forget the customer, right? You're in business outcomes, and getting closer to understand those requirements and try to drive the program and the priorities, like you said. So maybe something to be said that, understand cybersecurity is a services organization within any businesses that enables capabilities. But that BISO experience probably prepare you even better to become a much better CISO.
100%. I think, as you mentioned, when you define your customer needs and requirements and your business needs and requirements, I think that adding cyber to that mix, that is the topic everyone wants to talk about. So it can be the differentiator whether or not a new customer stays with you or a new customer comes on board, right? So it is that crucial, and that's what I've learned over the past few years.
So, obviously, Jack Henry, service provider, you were providing services to a lot of other institutions. So it kind of shifted a little bit your view of not only just your audience was just not the internal base, but also trying to enable capabilities for a business that actually had to interact with a lot of organizations and businesses globally, right?
Yeah, main focus within the U.S. Regional and credit union types of financial services organizations. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then now DTCC, my goodness, that I don't know that a lot of people know what DTCC does. And maybe you should just briefly describe and how much money does it go through the systems in DTCC?
Yeah, so at its core, right, some of the things that we do are really crucial and critical, being a significantly important financial market utility. And we're at the crux of a lot of post trades and, where information flows through within those activities. And I would say that it is crucial as what do they say, is the smallest and largest organization that you've probably never heard of. And if you're not in the space, you probably don't know who we are. But at a high level, being at the crux of all those financial transactions, it is the only organization I've worked with that we can use the number quadrillion. I don't think I've used that in my daily vernacular. I've been here for about 5-6 weeks, and I can tell you that maybe I don't use that word every day, but it comes up in conversation, and it's a really critical role as a significantly important financial market utility to make sure that we are resilient, that we're robust, and that our protections are in place to ensure the stability of the markets, and we continue to advance the markets together. So crucial role, and I'm super excited to be here. At the same time, I also understand the level of responsibility that each of my team members have across the organization to ensure that we remain safe and secure.
Yeah, I would imagine the bar is really high now because, you had to safeguard all that information that goes through and the amounts of money that they get through the utility. I love the way you describe it, and it is very, very interesting. So let's shift a little bit towards what are the biggest challenges that you see in our industry today? More just broadly speaking, our industry changes constantly. And so there's a threat landscape, there's new emerging technologies, there's a number of different factors that influence this stuff. So as now as the CISO of DTCC and your prior experience, what do you see the biggest challenges facing our industry?
Well, I would say that I'll start with the headwinds that we have in place, right? So I'll start there. So number one headwind for me has to do with talent. Last time I checked, and I want to say it was about a month ago, there were about 696,000 cybersecurity openings in the U.S. alone. If I look globally, the number is closer to about 1 million plus openings of cybersecurity professionals that are open today. So that tells me that we have a huge role to fill and not having the individuals that are perhaps interested and qualified or not interested and unqualified. So it tells me we have some type of problem there where the funnel is not large enough to accommodate transition in careers or bringing the folks into the environment. So that's one. So there's a talent issue. I feel the second one has to do with leadership in this space because it's not just around the technology. The technology is there. We need to have strong, robust technology leadership, but there's a people aspect associated with it. And I would tell you, if I get in a room and I talk to my CISO peers, they'll tell you that at every new organization that they've become a newer CISO to, they're revamping, renewing the program. So I think we kind of have a gap in that space. I feel that we should be having better succession leadership planning to ensure that doesn't occur. So one of the things that I'm super keen on is for the organizations I work for is to make sure that I'm building robust succession planning. People are important, and you want to make sure that as you careers, their journey in and onto themselves. So are you leaving behind, as your career advances and transitions, a team that can continue with the mission when your leadership team, half of them win the lottery or your leader's no longer there? So I think that's kind of the three-pronged headwind that we see. Now, on the positive side, so some of the tailwinds that I feel exist today is that, technology and the way we do things is changing right in front of us. So work that we're doing today is going to be different tomorrow. It's going to be different 2-3 years from now. So things are happening right now. A lot of great changes that we can leverage, whether it's that newer technology, newer ways of doing things. We've got a couple of generations coming up now that are thinking differently than us. I didn't grow up with an iPhone in my hand. I didn't grow up with internet, with super fast internet at home. And I feel that that's really going to change the ideas, the innovations that come up. So I'm super excited about what these newer generations are going to be able to influence in the way we do things to change for the better. So that's one. We talk very often about the advancements in computing, the advancements in the leveraging of large language models or other computational artificial intelligence like technologies. I feel that we are in the nascent stages, and I feel, and I'm a big proponent of leveraging those as needed to become more efficient, more robust, and faster delivery to the things we need to deliver for those positive outcomes. I feel that there's a lot of interest. I can hear now the clamoring from students as young as 8th grade talking about cybersecurity, which that was not the case a few years back. So there's a lot of interest in the work that we do, and folks like yourself, Alberto, and others continue to make that outreach. So how do we create and build cybersecurity as a common word, a household word that everyone knows what that is and can aspire to be in this profession? So for me, putting all of that together, the attackers are not skipping a beat, right? They know how to leverage the technology. They are also operating with new innovative ideas. They have the means, they have the methodologies, and they have the collaboration to do so. So for me, I feel that we are definitely at an inflection point, and it's going to require a lot of what I call the defenders to really hone in, get together, and continue to push the envelope for more collaboration, faster adoption of technologies, and ensuring that we continue to support and defend our critical infrastructure.
Very well said. Innovation has a place, and we love the fact that you're a member of our advisory council and help us whenever we find an idea, validate it, and try to refine it. And once we decide to make a bet, you work with the teams to make sure those products address real problems, and eventually they become successful in their own right. But going back to the tailwinds and the headwinds, how do you see the current regulatory environment? You live pretty much all your life in a highly regulated industry, starting in financial services. So you've seen the SEC putting some guidelines on terms of just not only reporting, demanding certain level of subject matter expertise at the board level. Some people hate regulatory environment, but sometimes it's the carrot and the stick, right? How do you think about the regulatory environment being an enabler or maybe a nuisance?
Yeah, no. So I think that it's more of a what I like to dub it as is the ebb and flow of the environments, right? So My role and my job, as I see it, and my priorities are to protect and defend. So now, in the process of protecting and defending, what am I missing? How can I get better? And I tend to see a lot of the regulatory requirements that come in place is really to ensure that folks are adhering to not only best practices, but what are the best ways to protect and defend. So I find that if your strategy is one that is about creating a good foundation, optimizing that foundation, and then continuously improve that life cycle, then you are doing that. So as regulatory requirements are going to come and go based on what's happening in the landscape and in the environment, if you're keeping up and you're continuing to optimize and enhance what you do, you're going to be just fine. So my take is I'm usually very excited to work with all my regulators and examiners and folks that need to understand what our environment looks like. Really, I see the value in understanding approaches, understanding coverage, and of course, how are we keeping up? Because what was good yesterday might not be good today. And sometimes some of the things that were really bad can become better if we're dealing with them appropriately. So I tend to look at things in a life cycle process, and I feel that regulatory requirements and examiners are just part of that ecosystem that we all have to, again, that collaboration, right? It's across the board. It's not just with your partners, not just with your peers. It's also with the folks that are ensuring that we continue to work, deliver, execute within the guidelines that we're mandated to.
And I think what the regulatory environment is also launching the role of the CISO as a key role. I remember way back in year 2000, Y2K, it launched the CFO as a critical member of the executive team and also at the board level having audit committees and all that. But now the regulatory environment, because it's complex, and cybersecurity, given that it's protect, defend, and our businesses are becoming increasingly digital, now the role of the CISO becomes imperative and incredibly more important. So now the evolution of the CISO for being reporting to the board, but being board members. And I know you're very active and you've done a lot of work in that area, trying to be member of a number of directors, groups, and trying to break that ceiling a little bit more into the role of the CISO on the board, on board of directors.
That's a great question. So I started reporting, whether it was to my internal boards or external boards, as a guest speaker since 2012. And I can tell you that I've seen the requests for information about cybersecurity increase exponentially in the last 12 years in this space, to that right now, if your board is not talking about cybersecurity once a quarter or perennially, there's something amiss. So it is a key risk, key activity for organizations to really keep a pulse on. And again, things are moving so fast that it definitely behooves not only understanding the environment that you're in, but also what are the threats that are happening, because you need to have that context as, well, who's coming after us? Why are they coming after us? Where are they coming after us? And how many times have we seen them? And what do they continue to do to try to infiltrate into our environments? And that's changing extremely fast. So I don't want to bore you with too many details, but it's no longer just about attacking computers, right? People are being part of these campaigns today. Executives, board members themselves, right, are all being targeted. So it's one of those things that you have to look at holistically, and it's continuing to evolve. And that's why I feel it's important. It needs to be, as you mentioned, a perennial sort of discussion at board, leadership committees, and of course, operating committees throughout.
Yeah. And let's shift complete different subject now. More, you have always been big at giving back. And for, and you've done other interviews and you say, hey, we contribute a little grain of salt or whatever to actually help our community. How has that make you a better person? And you've been a mentor to many. You've been part of organizations that help the next generation scale. So a bit on your role and how important it is for all of us that are becoming leaders in our own ways to show people that it is possible to get to new heights.
Thank you for that question. I think that's one that is close and dear to my heart, as I feel that, yes, someone said it is better to give than to receive. And as it pertains to sponsoring others and seeing others be successful, I couldn't be where I am today without folks like yourself, Alberto, and others. I mentioned Jim earlier. There's so many folks out there, Miss Crespo in middle school, right, that gave me an opportunity, that extended a hand because they saw something in me that maybe I didn't even see in myself. And in as much as I can share that and provide that to others, it's something that is really close to where I am as a person today, which is to say, how can I help more people be successful? Whether you choose to do cyber or not, it's that sense of getting better and advancing that I feel is needed. We're in an area today where diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging are not just words anymore. It is as a way of life. I can tell you that the organizations that I've worked with, work for, the ones with the best cultures and the best appetite for folks just being collaborative are the ones that allow people to bring their authentic selves each and every day. And I'm not going to say that it's nirvana, but, I think was Tony Horton said, a variety is the spice of life. And I find that, when you allow people to come in and be themselves, great things happen, right? And not to say that it's going to be roses and butterfly every day, but, it's par for the course. And I feel that we're making a lot of inroads. And I'm super excited to continue to mentor, to push the needle, and to make sure that minorities, women, underrepresented groups continue to be well represented, and also know that they have sponsors, they have allies, and it is, I want to say, a mission for me to continue to do that until I can no longer.
Yeah, I think, again, when we met, we were part of high tech, and then we're still actively working with the Hispanic community because we wanted to elevate and create that pipeline, inspire others to do that. And one thing that, at least when I was very involved with high tech, for me, giving back was a huge component of the organization. And I think the mentorship program, the fact that we wanted to prepare our own membership to be ready to go join boards and everything else, but that doesn't happen without the leaders that emerge and that people want to follow. And I think you've been one of those that people look after. And I really like the concept of the ambassador that I think DTCC, they're talking to you as potentially being an ambassador to the community, right? It's one of these things where they want to highlight some of their success and the fact that their leaders among their, team, they can help bring others to the level, right?
Yeah, no, I've one of the first things I did here actually was have a conversation with Unidos as part of our ERG group. I have further conversations internally with our ERG groups and places like Alpha as well, just to make sure we continue to share our stories and specifically on how we can become sponsors, ambassadors, to ensure people can see that, hey, yes, you can, yes, we can, and continue to strive for your goals, right? Sky's the limit, and don't think about the impossible, but make it sure that I am possible, and so are you.
Yeah. I guess the last question, I want to go to see what are the key characteristics for success as an individual. What do you see the constant values or the constant ways that you get defined, and what do you think people should carry along with themselves in order to be successful?
So I think the first one is really around personal. Please bring your authentic self.
Yeah.
To everything, right? So I think I can tell you I'm a big fan of skip level meetings, and I start my skip level meetings with trying to learn about folks. Tell me something that is special to you, key to you, that I otherwise wouldn't have known if I had asked you this question right now. Mm-hmm. And you'd be surprised how many people struggle with that. But once they open up, it's a different conversation. I've found, princesses, I found baronesses, I found race car drivers in my teams that I would have never known that these people were so exciting and amazing if I didn't ask that question. So bring your authentic self to work. Number 2 has to do with getting feedback, right? And sometimes that critique is what's going to make you better. Humans, our eyes look outwards, so it's really easy to see what needs to be fixed or helped with, moved along externally. When you ask for feedback, it's giving you a view that you may not have of yourself, and it's so important to request feedback. That's one of the things I'm always keen on, whether it's my boss, my peer, or somebody that works for me, or sometimes even someone from the outside. Hey, can you give me some feedback? What did you see here? How can I get better? What am I missing? It's all about understanding what your blind spots are. So those 2 are very personal. And I think the third one really is about others. So sometimes we have, again, humans very good at looking externally. Our eyes are facing outward on what needs to be improved. So how do you collaborate? How are you becoming part of the solution? And that is not a very specific thing, but it's across the board. Bring that collaborative spirit into each of your conversations about how you can help, not just of what you're seeing that needs to be helped or fixed or enhanced, but how can you enhance it and bring those ideas forward. So I find that those 3 attributes are really ones that are core to how I am as a person, as a leader. And I try to exhibit those all the time. Not perfect, but I'm always looking to get better. And I think that might be a 4th one there, endeavor to get better every day.
Yeah, no, and a lot of it has to deal with empathy as well, right? Because what defines us here is the context. As we grow older, there's 2 very important things: the context in our careers and the context. As we grow, we have more context, we have experience, and the context define us in a way that, make us very, very unique. You have to be comfortable with your own skin, which is what you said, being authentic yourself, but also have empathy that others have come up and may have different ways to get to where they need to be, but having that empathy and see how you could be of service, then, the rest is history.
Absolutely. That is one of my, if you look at my one key strength as I get to introduce myself, is being an empathetic leader. It's one of my 4 boxes that's close and dear to my heart, because that's part of that collaborative piece we just talked about, is to really hone in and listen to others. So key.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of work to do, and you're an emerging leader. You're an established leader, but you're emerging. You're young. You're going to go to new heights, and really appreciate your multiple contributions to our industry, and look for many, many years of partnership, working together and pushing and pulling up the next generation of leaders. So, Yonesy, thank you very much for taking the time. I hope, I'm sure that you would inspire many, many people on these Forgecasts, and maybe we'll come back in future episodes. So thank you again, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Alberto. We'll see you soon. And thank you to all the folks at Forgecast for making this happen. Have a good one.
Thank you, Yonesy. Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Subscribe to the Forgecast, which is brought to you by ForgePoint Capital. We're a leading cybersecurity and digital infrastructure venture capital firm that invests in exceptional teams protecting the digital future. To learn more about ForgePoint, visit forgepointcap.com or find us on LinkedIn and Twitter.